This is going to be on Facebook Live on our Tulsa Family Church. I don't know if anybody's watching right now, but they can. But it will go on YouTube also. So if you want to go back and if you miss a week, I have last week's, but I haven't put it out there because it's on my phone, and I haven't figured out how to move my phone over to YouTube yet. I need to do that, I guess. Studying Exodus 2. Okay. The title of the lesson is Moses' birth and early career, and in the Bible here it says Moses is redeemed from murder. So it's about the same titles here. And there went a man of the house of Levi and took to wife a daughter of Levi. Now we kind of set the stage last week, kind of rehearsed a little bit about the tribes and how they went down. Joseph went down. He was, his brother sold him into slavery, went down into Egypt, and the Lord blessed him in many different ways. And as he grew up, he became the second in Egypt. Okay, next to Pharaoh. Yeah.
Can you get the microphone?
Sure. I got turned on. Take just a second. With the roar of the air conditioner, I can talk very loud.
For those of you listening on Facebook and YouTube, elevator music.
Need to get the lapel mic. See if it still works. I don't even know if it still works. One more time. Now, why did I take that off? Just not put it down here. My brain's a little slower than it used to be. Okay. That's right. Did I tell you I'm retired? No, yeah, we won't go there, okay. Is that a little better? Okay. Thank you. So as they left, of course they went and got his family and brought them all back to Egypt because the famine was coming. That was the dream that Pharaoh had, and Joseph had interpreted. Well, he brought all his family back, and it talked about about 430 years between that time and where we're at now, okay? And said in the meantime, that Pharaoh died, new Pharaoh come up, didn't know anything about Joseph, and he said, these people are growing like crazy. And we need to be careful because if they go, they will side up with somebody else, the Midianites or Hittites up north, and they could overcome them easily. Okay, so that's kind of where chapter 1 ends. And the very last part, he charged all his people, saying, every son that's born he shall cast into the river, and every daughter he shall save alive. And it was up to 3 months old, I think it was, or 3 years. I have to go back and look. What does it say there? Well, it'll say here 3 months. That's what it says. But that's just how long he did it.
3 months.
Yeah. That's how long they hid Moses. So we have a man and a wife, a man and a woman getting married. They're both of the tribe of Levi, okay? So they're both priestly. So Moses and Aaron and Miriam was the 3 that we know about. There may have been other brothers and sisters, but they're not listed, okay? We just have to go with what's here. And really Aaron and Miriam are older. Miriam's mentioned here, but not by name. It said his sister. So we're assuming it was Miriam, okay? So the woman conceived and bare a son. They got married and they bare a son. And when she saw him, that he was a goodly child, he hid them 3 months, okay? What does a goodly child mean?
Healthy.
Healthy, I think, what?
No birth defects.
No birth defects. I think it's maybe more, and I didn't look this up, but I think it's leaning towards favored. They understood. If you go back and kind of read some of the commentaries that's behind this, the Jewish people have a lot of extra literature that we a lot of times don't read. Josephus is one of them. I mean, he was a Jewish writer, but they have a lot of others that were written a long time ago. And it's kind of like take it with a grain of salt. A lot of people believe that Moses' mother and father understood that Moses was going to be great, or going to be one of those leaders, even from his very beginning. Now, it's not in the Bible, okay? There's nothing that says that, except this particular portion that could lead to maybe he was favored, okay? Or he was a goodly child. They understood he was going. Now, that's not saying Aaron and Miriam's not, but they kind of understood where this was going. Pharaoh had put out an edict. Evidently, Aaron and Miriam were older. They didn't reach this time period that they were telling them to throw them in the midwives to throw them in the river when the babies are born. So this is kind of set up, and this is kind of the thinking behind what it may be. And you can go and read Matthew Henry and some of the others talk about that a little bit. That maybe they thought that, you know, he was going to be favored. He was going to be a natural leader. The time had come. The people were being slaves. They were being pushed, you know, as slaves are, beyond their matter. And it was time for them to go back home. You know, somebody to lead them and go back. And they kind of, that's what a lot of some of the commentaries said. Verse 3 says, "And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's bank." So she made a little basket of reeds, some kind of, and pitched it. These same words, if you go back into the Hebrew, these same words are the words that they used for the ark, okay? When they built the ark, of course they built it of gopher wood, but they slimed it, pitched it, put stuff on it to make it float, make it waterproof, okay? So these are kind of, and the wording is a little unusual here in the King James. It says ark also, an ark of bulrushes. It says reeds here, but I think it's appropriate. As Noah built the ark to carry, you know, God's people out. At that time, it's just Noah and his family. So too, Moses was built an ark by his family to carry the people of Egypt out. Okay, the people of Israel out of Egypt. Just kind of a type and shadow, if you want to say it that way, okay, of what's leading it. And she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. So she was by the Nile River, and she put it out. And his sister, there's where we're talking about it, possibly Miriam, stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. She wanted to make sure what's going on. God favored him. What's in the Nile River?
Alligators.
Yeah, crocodiles, probably. Yeah.
Crocodiles.
Big, mean things. Crocodiles, alligators, whatever. Piranha, just all kinds of things. And other animals that's coming up to the bank that's trying to feed and drink and everything too. So God laid his hand. We don't see this in the Bible, but God moved upon him so this happened. Now, we don't hear the backstory either as far as his mom was the one doing it. Mom and dad did this. Okay, they built these ark and the bulrushes and put them out. But where to put it in at? Well, you want to put it in where somebody comes all the time. I think they knew a lot of when the princess came and went. Because a lot of times they would go and that's where they would bathe. It's not the cleanest water per se, but it's cleaner than what they normally had. Yeah. Yeah. So they would go down to the river, and so they kind of knew the routine. They may have seen it. I don't know, they may have been a part of it. Being slaves, okay, they were slaves. I mean, the king had slaves, whether they're the Israelis or not, I don't know, Jewish people, I'm sure there were. Because we see that all through the history that God favored them, and they were even in the hierarchy or the royalty. So it very well could be that they knew exactly when the princess was going and what was going to take place. Here again, we don't see that in this, but I kind of, the commentators are leaning that way, that God favored them in one way or another, whether it's putting them in a certain place so they know where to go and know what time and all this stuff. So you don't really see that, but that's kind of the story behind it that could have taken place. We don't know for sure. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river. And her maidens walked along by the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him, and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Now she's the daughter of the Pharaoh. She knows he's given an edict. We need to kill the Hebrew babies. But yet when the baby cries and she sees that it's left out there alone, she had compassion. God again favored this to happen, in my opinion. I mean, it just, to me, it's plain as day that God put forth this. Now, his sister's watching, okay, somewhere behind the scenes where they can't really see her.
You know what's cool is the whole thing. He's born. Okay, he's going to be a priest.
Right.
He's going to be a prophet.
Right.
He's born out of the house of Levi. Okay. I mean, again, you see God's handiwork, like you said, in the whole thing. How that.
Even in the Egyptian hierarchy, the way the commentaries read, he was the next in line. Moses was. Even though he was Jewish, his daughter could be the queen, but then after her, he could be the king. He learned a lot in the royal household being that way. We haven't got there yet, but we'll see that. And he matured and he learned about the Egyptians' ways and how, how everything works. He was given the best. I'm sure he was schooled, learned the Hebrew language, the Egyptian language, learned all these things, learned to read, write, what the royalty does.
Again, don't want to get ahead, but it's just like creation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, God set it in order. Okay, first of all, he made the firmament and the skies and stuff, and that oxygen and all that kind of stuff. Then he made the plants, and just progressive along. In the same way here, you can see his handiwork here, how he's progressing with it.
That's right. We can read over the story real quick or watch the movie or whatever, and we miss a lot of it if we don't kind of look into the background of it a bit. Verse 7 says, "Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, Shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee?" Okay, it was not just fortuitous that she was there. She had an idea, hey, I'm going to try to, she's taken her, and obviously right now, she's a maiden, so she's not married. So she's going to take this, well, we don't know that for sure, I just put that in, that's Daryl 1-on-1. But she put it in, wanted to take care of this baby. But even in the royalty, a lot of times the children don't see the mothers. They have people to take care of them. If you've ever, I know Sister Liz went over to England, and some of the other people may have gone visited different places. I think you went to England, didn't you? Yeah, that's what I thought. You can't imagine how they live. It's just amazing. They don't do anything for themselves, hardly. Some of them might, but they got people to wait on them hand and foot. They got people making their breakfast and, all kinds of food and tasting the food. They go out and do the shopping. They keep the temperature okay for the castle they're living in or whatever. And it's kind of like what I understood, now I don't know if this is true, the president doesn't carry a wallet. I don't know if this president, but I've heard other presidents don't carry a wallet because they don't pay for nothing. The Secret Service guys going back here and getting the tickets and the bills, and they're paying for everything, taking care of, okay, you charge it or whatever. But that's the way he was given the best that could be done. Well, here, Miriam or his sister is telling them, I can go get you a nurse from the Hebrew women that'll take care of this child for you, nurse it and do that. And she said, okay. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go, and the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, take this child away, nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. So not only is she nursing her own son, she's getting paid for it. Boy, God had providence there as far as taking care of them, and they benefited for that. Now, Moses knew. He was there with his mom and dad. That bond is made, okay, with the mother. So no matter how long, nursing 3-6 months, I'm not sure exactly how long they nursed back then, but
I was gonna say, I've heard before that they nursed.
it could be 2
They
years.
used to nurse up to like 6 years.
Yeah,
old.
it could very well be a very long time. And we don't really know exactly how long that is, but they were with their family. So they knew, I'm sure mom and dad told them who they were, but yet you were placed here for a reason and this is why. Told them all about this. But he got, I don't say the best of both worlds, but he got both his Hebrew Jewish history, plus he got the Egyptian favor, okay, being in the royal family.
So, how did she know who the mom was?
How did she who?
They went to go get her.
Well, Miriam did, his sister. Miriam's going to go get his mama, her mama. It's Moses and Aaron. See, it says, I don't know if it's Miriam, but it says it's his sister,
Yeah,
Moses' sister.
It said here over in chapter 12.
It does, yeah, it does say that it's Miriam. So that's who she goes and gets. She's not going to get anybody else. Here again, that's God's favor. God's working it out.
And she said she can nurse it, so I
Mhm.
guess she thought maybe she's got other kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Okay, come here, darling. I want you to nurse this. No, that ain't gonna work. Okay, come here. I don't think anybody here is going to be able to do that. It ain't going to help the child. Okay, I'll sell that. Okay, but she knew, and it wasn't specific as far as how did this Miriam know that. Now Pharaoh's daughter may have figured it out after a while. I don't know how much she knew, how much she didn't know, but it's capable, as you said, if they nurse them a long time, that they're going, or even a year or two, the people know who has kids, and the mothers are still going to be able to have that, capability. So that's who it was. It was Miriam, his sister, went and got her mom. Is basically what that is.
Yeah.
So she got paid for it. And verse 10 says, and the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son, and she called his name Moses, and she said, because I drew him out of the water. That's interesting. Mom and dad didn't name him. Well, they probably named him, but we don't know what the name was.
Right.
Moses was the name that stuck. It's the Egyptian name. And it says Masha here, or to draw out. The Hebrew word is for Moses, or Mash, M-A-S-H-A-H. Kind of like Philip's Masha, only with a O. Hers is. Okay, so whatever the time frame was, they had him there, and then they gave him over. It's a lot like when Samuel was a child, and his mother understood he had, was going to give him back because she couldn't have a child. God gave her a child. Samuel, she gave him back to the Lord. She took him to the priest, to serve in the priesthood, but she had to nurse him for a while. But Samuel was still very young, so we can kind of get a time frame in there. Samuel heard, he understood, he could talk, so 3, 4, 5 years, like you said, maybe even up to 6, who knows? That he was under the influence of his mom and dad, basically, before he started his training in the royal family. Okay, we skip ahead almost 40 years, okay? Verse 11 says, "And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren, the Israelites, and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren." Now, Moses was, like I said, in the royal family, so he could go anywhere, do anything he wanted. He had carte blanche to go anywhere, and so he did. He'd go over. We talked about a little bit last week. The Hebrews were kind of south. I think it's south. I have to pull my map out. I'm going to do that here. I didn't do it this week, but I think it's in Gershom. Later on in the book, it talks about where they were at, and it's I don't know, mile or two or so south of the capital area in Egypt. But anyway, Moses was out there seeing where all this was taking place, seeing where the work was taking place, and he saw one of the taskmasters or someone beating one of the slaves for whatever reason, we don't know. Moses took object to that because he knew he was, an Israeli too, or a Jewish, or a Hebrew person, I'll say it that way. So because of that, he went off and, I'm getting ahead of myself. He saw him smiting him, one of his brethren. Now Moses, in his mindset, he thinks, okay, I'm top dog around here, I can do whatever I want. Everybody ought to be happy that I'm helping them. He's both Egyptian and he's Jewish or Hebrew. So he took off, it says verse 12, "And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand." So he became a murderer. Now at that particular time, he didn't see any problem with that. Okay? Remember that for the next 80 years. Okay? Because that's going to come back. Even that murder does not keep him out of heaven. What kept her crossing into the promised land, I'll say it that way. Because he disobeyed God later on. Once he had his encounter, and we'll reach that several verses in here, several chapters in, then he is constantly has to be reaffirmed, but God is with him. We can see that as he goes through there. God's been up there to him. He had a purpose that in his mind it was greater because he was hurting his people, and he was going to try to take care of that. So he killed the Egyptian and he buried him in the sand. And he thought the other guy would be gracious enough not to say nothing. I don't know if nobody else was around. Apparently shouldn't have been or whatever. But he thought he'd keep it quiet because, hey, this guy did me a favor. He took that guy out. Well, somebody's going to, in thinking this through, somebody's going to come looking for that slave master. And when he's not there, who's going to get the retaliation? It's going to be the slaves that's under him because they should be able to tell him where it's at. Now, whether they told them or not, we don't know. Eventually, it makes it back to Pharaoh. We'll see here in just a minute. But in the next verse, he went out the second day. Behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together or fought together, and he said unto them that did the wrong, so one of them was right, one of them was wrong, evidently. Wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? So here again, he's becoming, in his mind, he's becoming the judge. He's already the king, or close to the king, and they're not seeing him as a judge, but he's the judge in his mind. He's thinking, I ought to be able to tell these people what to do, and they ought to do it. So he asked him a question, why do you smite your own fellow? And he said, the other guy said, who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Okay, he's already questioning what's going on. Do you intendest thou to kill me as thou killedst the Egyptian? And it's like, oh, wait a minute, okay, the cat's out of the bag now. Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. So somebody told him, and it's probably his Hebrew friend told, people around him, maybe in a good way. Maybe he said, man, that guy was beating the snot out of me, and some, Moses came down and took care of him for me. Well, not knowing that, sometimes you tell a story and everybody gets down the road and like it always happens, seems like. So finally, verse 15 says, now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. So Moses, and this was, if you go back and look at the time periods of Moses' life, up to 40 years he was pretty much in Egypt. 40 to 80 years he's pretty much in Midian. And then 80 on is the true Exodus, okay, 80 to 120 before they go into the promised land. So he went up, he was scared because Pharaoh had heard or learned that he was, had killed an Egyptian, and he didn't quite have the same attitude that Moses did, okay? So he was going to go after him, and so Moses took off. And he went up to Midian, and he sat down by a well. Well, it's quite a ways from Egypt to the land of Midian. So a well is a perfect place that he's wanting to rest. He wants to get a drink of water and all this stuff. So now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. It says the priest. They may have been only the one priest, but I can't hardly believe that, but it could have been. Had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. So at that time they had several things that they could water, camels, and cows, and sheep, and just all kinds of things that they could water. And it took them a long time, even though it's seven daughters, they had to lower the bucket, get it out of the well, and then carry it over to the trough, and they just kind of had a line doing that. And then some shepherds came up and drove them away. Okay, some guys that you ever get in traffic and somebody jumps in front of you? Or you ever get in a line and somebody jumps the line? That's what these guys did. They jumped the line. We don't care about these people. We're tired. We've been out here. We're going to get the water. So they drove them off. And Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flocks. So whatever Moses did, he took care of them shepherds. He said, get out of here, get out of town, like Marshall Dillon, he's going to get out of here. So they did, yeah, cue you right, no, I'm sorry. So they did that. They took over. Moses even helped them water their flocks. And then the daughters were happy, glad that they could get their business done because they did that. They still had other chores to do, I'm sure. They went back to their father. And when they came to rule, their father, he said, how is it that you are come so soon today? So evidently, they got it done a lot faster than what they normally would get it done. They said an Egyptian, he was still in his outfit, he just took off running, so he's still in his Egyptian clothes. An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock. That's a lot of work. And he said unto his daughters, where is he? Okay, they did you a great favor. Why didn't you invite him home? We owe him a little bit of money, a little bit of payment. Why is it you have left the man? Call him that he may eat bread. So evidently he was still there. They went back and got him. Don't know how far it was, but they went back and got him. And verse 21 says, and Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses, the father, gave Moses Zipporah, his daughter, and to be his wife. Okay, it doesn't say that. But in the next one it says, and she bare him a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, I have been a stranger in a strange land. So this took a little time. Of course, it's really condensed here, but Took at least a year, you know, to get married and then have a kid. But Moses settled in to Midian. He said he found a place. He was learning how to work, because up until now he didn't have to work. He had a bunch of slaves or royalty to take care of it, servants and all this stuff. And it's hard work. They had to water them sheep or cows or whatever, and then they had to take care of them. If it's cows, they had to milk them. Even camels, they had to milk them. Sheep, they had to take, you know, and keep them out of trouble and go feed them. All kinds of things that they had to take care of the flocks. Now this priest, Rael, must have been fairly wealthy. I mean, he had a lot of flocks, so, I mean, he's not maybe the best man in town, most powerful man in town, but he was a priest, and he did have a lot of, evidently, affluence, okay? So she called, she bare him a son, Moses did, and Moses called his name Gershom, for he had said, I have been a stranger in a strange land. He came to Midian. Now Midian came, I'll ask you, where did the land of Midian, who started that? Or where does that come from when we talk about the Midianites? Anybody know? Let's reverse and go back to Abraham. Abraham, after Sarah, had a handmaiden called Keturah. If you go back and look, Keturah, one of her children was one that started the Midianites. Okay, the branch of the Midianites. You can go through there, and a lot of the people, I mean, Ishmael, you know, had his branch that he had. Later on, Jacob and Esau. Esau started the Esau, can't think of their name now, but Edomites, there you go. And they would fight against Abraham's people. All these essentially go back to Abraham. Abraham said, God said to Abraham, I'm going to make you a father of many nations. And he did. Okay, it's a good thing, and maybe it's not so much a good thing as far as they're all fighting. Seems like they're fighting back and forth.
And then even drop down between, like you said, Esau and Jacob. I mean,
Yeah, the split came right there, because Jacob then became Israel, and then his 12 sons become the Israelites. Basically, that's where the land, the tribes came from. Verse 23, let's go ahead and finish it up for the night. And it came to pass in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried, and their cry came up unto God by reason of the bondage. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God had respect unto them. Okay? 80 years. Just like that. From first of the chapter to the last of the chapter, we've gone almost 80 years, not quite 80. Yeah, almost not quite 80 years, but pretty close. So, any questions about tonight or anything? It's kind of setting the story for the book of Exodus, what comes next.
Well, I don't know if this is a coincidence. That my watch is called Keturah.
Keturah, is it?
Yeah.
There you
Seiko
go.
Keturah.
There you go.
No, maybe a Midianite.
Midianite, maybe. Who knows? Any questions?
Does it say in the book of Exodus that Moses finally reunites with his birth mother?
It does not that I'm aware of.
Oh,
We don't see anything, and since it had been, like I said, almost 80 years total, we don't really hear anything else about it since then.
Yeah, but
She
he's
served
with
it
his
first.
brother.
that's who got.
I'm sorry?
I said him and he knows his brother. because-
Oh yeah, it's true brother and true sister, but I'm talking, it's birth mother?
Yes.
Oh yeah, later on.
That sounds-
I don't, I don't know if they passed by that time or not. I was thinking of the queen, the princess is what you're saying, I'm sorry. I don't know that it says that, in there, because at the time, he's 80. Aaron and Miriam are older, don't know exactly, I'd have to go back and look and see, I think it says their age when they died, but that would make their mom and dad probably 100 or more if they were still alive.
So back then they lived for quite a long time.
Yeah, but like I said, Moses lived 120 years, but that's basically.
Because of him meeting his brothers is what made me wonder if he actually ever did get reunited with his birth mother.
It's possible. It's possible. We just really don't know. I mean, it doesn't say. Now here again, some of the Hebrew literature might have something on it, but as Jimmy brought up a few weeks ago, some of it we don't quite believe. Could be that happened. We just don't know.
Saying that.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
What gets me is Pharaoh's daughter has to bathe with the crocodiles.
Well, they all
They had a
did.
bathtub in the palace.
Yeah, they didn't have a palace. I kind of envision it a little different.
Maybe go swimming.
I think it's kind of like the swimming areas at the lakes, and even more so, it may be just for the royalty. You can imagine they built walls, cages, so nothing's going to get in when they get in there. Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's pretty well taken care of. So.
The thing got me was how Jethro's daughters were watering his sheep, and I was thinking, it'd be really rough when Amber was growing up to get her to water.
Get her to water. Got Daniel to water his pigs. Been feeding his pigs for what, 3 years, something like that. But
It was just an interesting question.
yeah. Anything else?
Do you think that Moses was getting off into self